anti-Semitism here? And I haven't heard the answers, and I believe I have some of those answers for you. But I want to start just for those who are unfamiliar with our work by saying that I am the chair of the alliance described by Councillor Pasternak. We now have 47 community organizations that have joined us. They include Jewish and non-Jewish, Indigenous leadership, Catholic, Hindu, Muslim, right across the spectrum. And that is because we take our strength from a coalition of allies who wish to fight anti-Semitism and all kinds of hate. I've been combating hatred, including anti-Semitism, for almost 40 years. And we're doing it through advocacy, education, training, as well as respectful dialogue. But I want to focus on something that I'm doing that is relevant to the question that I think is most germane to today's discussion. And that is what the city can actually be doing to address the hate that now exists. Because my activities now include the training and education of police and prosecutors on legal remedies to combat hate. And I've been doing that training across the country. And let me tell you unequivocally, let us stop saying that the criminal law does not have the tools available to combat the hate that is occurring in our city. People of good faith say it, others say it as well. It is simply not true. Similarly, I understand the impediments to a prosecution for willful promotion of hatred, which is the section that's most commonly used. We have a wealth of criminal law provisions that exist in this country that are applicable to the activities that we are seeing on our streets. For example, if protests involve the blockages of roads and highways of any kind, of bridges, we have mischief, the interference with the lawful use and enjoyment of property. We have unlawful assembly. We have criminal intimidation that specifically addresses trying to induce people to do things through the blockages of roads and highways. So stop telling me that the criminal law is inadequate to address the hate that we are seeing across the country. It's not true. In addition to that, and I can tell you that is part of the educational experience that I give to police officers, and this is not a criticism of the police force either in Toronto or elsewhere. We have a lot of good people who want to be trying to do the right thing, that understand the situation, but we have to stop misinforming law enforcement that their tools are inadequate and we need legislative reform. I have proposed legislative reform, but it's not necessary in order to get to the bottom of what we're dealing with. Second of all, municipal bylaws exist that are not being enforced. You heard it from Councillor Pasternak. I know they're being enforced in other jurisdictions. I've asked the Toronto Police Service, and I think they're committed to looking at what's happening in Calgary and Ottawa and other jurisdictions where the municipal bylaws are being used. Don't tell me that people can walk the streets of Toronto setting off smoke bombs in the city when the municipal bylaw prohibits it. Don't tell me that you can block roads and highways when there are specific provisions that exist under our municipal bylaw that deals with the temporary obstruction of roads and highways. And don't tell me, and this is currently policy on the part of the city, that permits need not be obtained for protests of the kinds that we're dealing with because obtaining a permit would interfere with freedom of speech or freedom of assembly. The jurisprudence is abundantly clear that cities can impose permit requirements to regulate the time, place, and nature of the activities that are taking place on our streets without impairing in an unconstitutional way the freedom of speech and freedom of assembly that we all enjoy. So it's time, number one, for the City of Toronto to get on board and consider the use of permit powers in order to regulate the kinds of protest activity we're seeing. Number two, the mayor was correct to the extent to which, and I wish she could hear this from me, she was correct to the extent to which she said that politicians cannot direct police as to laying charges in individual cases. That's true, but political will starts at the top. When we talk about zero tolerance for anti-Semitism in our city, the police have to understand that there is a true commitment on the part of the City of Toronto for zero tolerance for anti-Semitism and everything that entails. And how can that be incorporated in policing? Well, we have one of the members of the Police Services Board here, so she's very familiar with this. There is no current policy that exists in policing in Toronto on how to police public order events. They're working on the development of the policy, but none exists. None exists. So what can the city do? The city can lend support to a rapid consideration of what that policy should look like. I've made recommendations to the board as to what it should be and what it can include as a matter of policy, not directing an individual case. As a matter of policy is the robust use of the criminal code, of municipal bylaws, of provincial laws under the Highway Traffic Act and other legislation to get tough on hate protests. And that kind of policy does not exist in Toronto and has to exist in order to give direction from the top. So again, let's not hear that politicians are unable to direct where policing goes. They can't do so in individual cases, but it's where the will to prosecute commences. And so that's important. The next point, why can't the City of Toronto create legislation that immunizes places of worship and places of sensitivity from protest activity? It's being done in other jurisdictions. It's been done in Vaughan. It's been done in BC. It's been done in a variety of places. And I can tell you there is no constitutional impediment to it whatsoever, and it's long overdue. The fourth point that I would make, that where the city is, with respect, inadequate, is I've reviewed the city's policies that are in effect. I've reviewed the city manager's most current plan on dealing with hate. I've reviewed what is incorporated in that, which is an initiative on dealing with anti-Semitism. And the definition of anti-Semitism that is in the continuing documents now is outdated. Why is it outdated? Because we can have people say, I believe in zero tolerance for anti-Semitism, without recognizing the modern manifestation of anti-Semitism, which is the misuse of anti-Zionism by simply substituting the word Zionist for Jew, and therefore attempting to immunize activity from prosecution. Now, I want to be clear about this. I'm a strong proponent in freedom of expression. I'm a strong proponent in freedom of assembly. I'm a strong proponent that Israel, like any other country, is entitled to be the subject of robust criticism for its policies, or its practices, or its government, or what have you. But those who hate us as members of the Jewish community have misconstrued, deliberately so, what the IRA definition of anti-Semitism says. It does not immunize Israel from criticism. It does not permit the prosecution of people for merely criticizing Israel and applying the same kinds of criticisms that are leveled against other countries. But what it recognizes is where the line is then crossed into anti-Semitism in the way Israel's described. So to give you examples, don't tell me that it isn't hate speech when you call for the death of all Zionists when 91% of Canadian Jews are Zionists. Don't tell me that labeling all Zionists without distinction as racist, genocidal, and evil is immune from prosecution. Don't tell me that chanting from water to water, Palestine shall be Arab, is not a genocidal chant. Don't tell me that calling for the violent destruction of the state of Israel and its supporters is immunized from prosecution or charges because the word Jew isn't mentioned. Don't tell me that intimidating Canadian Jews through deliberate choices of protest venues in proximity to Jewish community centers, places of worship, businesses, or neighborhoods is immunized from prosecution. Don't tell me that blocking roads, tunnels, or bridges to compel others to change what they're entitled to do or not do doesn't constitute a criminal offense. Don't tell me that chanting support for designated terrorist organizations and their terrorist leaders or calling for global intifada by any means necessary doesn't make it clear that that is a call for the destruction of the entire state of Israel and therefore all Israeli Canadians, all Jews who are supporters of the state of Israel. Don't tell me any of those things. Don't tell me that they're immune from prosecution. So, if the city really wants to show, not simply say, it has zero tolerance for anti-Semitic hatred, if the city wants to avoid the Montreal riots, if the city wants to reduce the likelihood of an Amsterdam, then one of the things that the city can do is adopt as part of its policies the IRA definition of anti-Semitism and implement it as a guidance for
Your comments are fascinating, and this is crucial information, but
time marches.
We've been most generous at 12 minutes.
You have it.
So